This BenQ monitor has been out for almost a year now, and when it first launched, it was still a pretty good monitor, but a little bit high in price. But now that it's stabled at a much more affordable price, this is now a pretty baller option. Let's have a look. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. Today we're going to be checking out the BenQ EX3203R gaming monitor now that it's at a much more affordable price range here in mid to, is it late 2019? Oh my god, it's late 2019. I'm gonna be a dad. Anyway, yeah. If you want to see more monitor reviews like this one, then hit the subscribe button down below and also the notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But before we get into it, let me quickly pay some bills. Today's video is brought to you by Pulseway, which is a really neat remote monitoring and management software that I've actually deployed across my entire network down here in my studio. Pulseway is an all-in-one network management platform that allows you to remotely monitor and even control all of your devices that you installed the lightweight client on, which by the way, pretty much every operating system is supported. I personally really like the phone application because it allows me to quickly see what's going on with all of my devices, such as their temperatures, what processes are running, and I can even run scripts and perform Windows updates no matter where I'm at in the world. For us PC gamers, this is perfect because it allows us to start up those lengthy Windows updates while we're away, so we know our gaming rigs are 100% good to go when we get home. There's also pages and pages of notification settings to configure so you can get all sorts of alerts from your devices. Head on down to the first link in the description to score yourself a free version account which supports up to 2 devices, or use discount code ZTT to save 2 months off your next subscription. Alright, so for the quick rundown of the BenQ EX3203R, it's a massive 32-inch 1440p 144Hz curved HDR400 FreeSync 2 display. When it launched several months ago, it came in at an also massive $700 price tag, but since then it's stabled around $500, which I think is much more appropriate, and there's definitely some value here. It's also a VA panel, so it's kind of in between TN and IPS. It's got really great blacks, and there's also 90% color gamut. This is an 8-bit panel and not a 10-bit, which means it's probably not for super professional video editors or anything like that, but for gaming and the average YouTuber like myself, that shouldn't pose any issues whatsoever. In my opinion, the colors are very vibrant, and it was almost distracting when I first fired this thing up because it's much more vibrant than any other monitor I have down here in the studio, and this makes it really fun when gaming. As far as editing goes, in post-production, I actually boost the saturation in most of my footage, and with the vibrant colors of this monitor, it made it look like I didn't need to boost the colors when in reality I actually did. You can certainly get used to it, and it's really good for gaming, but for editing, I just didn't like it because of that reason. Speaking of gaming though, this panel is rocking a 4 millisecond response time, which you guys should know by now. I think is personally fine, and I doubt there are many people on the planet that can even tell a difference between this and like a TN panel's 1 millisecond response time. The panel is also rocking a peak brightness of 400 nits, and this in turn allows them to put HDR400 on the box. A lot of people online won't consider this true HDR, but you can certainly see a difference when you turn it on and off. I've seen this quote-unquote not real HDR in monitors in the past, and I personally just prefer to leave it off, especially on this monitor because the colors are great right out of the box, but there is an option if you prefer this, FYI. There's also FreeSync 2, which is obviously an upgrade from FreeSync, but honestly, there's not a lot of crazy upgrades. It does allow HDR to be used, but I already expressed my opinion on that, and they also added low frame rate compensation, so the FreeSync will actually work at a lower FPS. I did end up testing this monitor with my $1,200 gaming PC build, which I just released a video on, and it's indeed rocking an AMD 5700 XT, and gaming on this thing with FreeSync turned on is absolutely buttery smooth. While we're on the subject of adaptive sync though, this is not a G-Sync compatible monitor, and I wouldn't recommend overriding the setting in NVIDIA control panel either. I actually did a lot of research with other tech YouTubers, and every single one of them said that they had some sort of issue when turning G-Sync on. Sometimes the screen froze or it stayed black or whatever, so I didn't even think it was necessary to test this monitor out with an NVIDIA GPU. To wrap up the feature list, BenQ created a brightness intelligent technology which allows the monitor, when enabled, to dynamically adjust the screen's brightness based on the brightness in your room. This works just like your phone does, and honestly, it's a pretty good feature for someone like me because sometimes I come down here in the studio and I have all these lights turned on when working, and then sometimes I just turn them all off and I prefer to work in the dark, and it worked pretty well when when it adjusts. With the feature list and performance parts out of the way, let's jump into the physical tour real quick before wrapping up this video. The stand that the BenQ EX3203R comes with definitely looks premium with the shiny finish, but it only allows for a height adjustment and tilt, but there's no pivot or swivel. In my opinion, this is kind of a bummer, especially at this baller of a price range, but hold up. It gets worse. On the back here, you'll notice that it's rocking a funky connector connect the stand, which obviously isn't VESA. There is a proprietary BenQ VESA adapter that you can buy separately, but yeah, also definitely a bummer. Not having a VESA mount on the back is just a low ball move in my opinion, especially considering this monitor launched at $700. Usually the type of people that can afford this baller of monitors prefer to put it on a different VESA stand, and I just don't think this should be acceptable in my book. There's also no integrated speakers, which is another huge bummer in my opinion. I fully explained this in my other recent monitor review, which you should totally check out as well. On the back, going from left to right, there's a power port, headphone jack, 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.4, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A ports, and finally an appreciated USB Type C port. The power brick is external, which is definitely a pain, but we're starting to see this more and more with these slim monitors, so I really can't complain much more on that. Opening up the on-screen display reveals all of the basic options that you would want, and I really didn't find any settings that it didn't have that I was looking for, and it actually included a picture-in-picture mode, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. On PC, this isn't that big of a deal because you can always just resize your windows, but on consoles, this actually might be a desired feature, but I wouldn't know. And finally, the last point that I want to bring up is the curvature and size, because it actually took some getting used to for me. I've never gamed on this big of a monitor before, and with the edges curving towards me, it was actually a pretty immersive experience. At first, I wanted to back away from my monitor because you can actually see a lot of the screen in your peripheral vision, but after you get used to it, it was a pretty fun playing experience. Overall, if you're in the market for a mid to high tier gaming monitor around the $500 price range, then I think it's safe to say that the BenQ EX3203R is a solid choice for you. Some tiny details like not already including a VESA mount ticked me off a little bit, but don't let that stop you from purchasing this monitor. One thing to note is that I would ensure that you're actually looking for a 32-inch display before buying it, as it definitely comes down to personal preference and it may or may not be right for you. Well, that wraps up my review of the BenQ EX3203R gaming monitor. As always, drop a comment down below about what you thought of this monitor or what other monitor you want to see me review next. After that, feel free to head on over to one of these two videos if you haven't seen them yet, and definitely hit that subscribe button because coming up next, my first troubleshooting guide. You don't want to miss that video.